Meeting, please come to order. Barbara, please call the roll.
We have Commissioners Broad, Fleming, Funderburg, Levine, and Noonan present.
This proceeding is broadcast on Channel 35. The exact broadcast times can be found by contacting Channel 35. I have no opening remarks. Madam General Manager?
Only one, sir. As you noted in yesterday's press release, effective August 16th, I'll be retiring from service as DWP's General Manager. The Mayor has offered, and I've accepted, an advisory role through December of this year to help ensure an orderly transition, as well as allow me to provide support on specific issues critical to DWP, such as the regionalization topic, the energy imbalance market. So you will see me around for some number of months yet. And Dave Wright will be interim general manager until a permanent general manager is selected.
Can we extend you beyond the end of the year?
I believe it moves into involuntary servitude at that juncture.
Actually, the look said it even more clearly than the words. Comments from commissioners on agendized items and requests from commissioners relating to departmental operations.
You're looking at me.
I'm looking at you. Are you looking? No? Okay. None? Okay. I understand we have no public comment cards.
No cards.
Comments from ratepayer advocate on agendized items.
Only some brief comments on the policy discussion and maybe one of the management reports.
Okay, we will then move to the policy discussion. Item 6, Madam General Manager, who will be presenting?
So I'd like to introduce this, if I may. Energy storage technologies are rapidly developing, especially distributed storage technologies, and it's becoming very strategically important on how we integrate these into our system. We're no stranger to storage. We've been building storage for 40, 50 years with hydro and Castaic power plant. But what's changing is that instead of hydro, we're seeing different technologies. So I'm going to have Louis Ting talk to you a little bit about the technologies and how they fit into the system, because not all storage is the same. They meet very specific needs. So what we want to do is storage develops, we want to make sure it meets power system needs and we align with the industry. And that's what we want to talk about today. So we hope that it is an interactive session for questions and comments, and I'll turn it over to Louis to get started.
Good morning. Louis Ting, Director of Power Planning and Development. Today I'm presenting this presentation to the board. It is typically a little longer than my typical presentation. This is 11 slides instead of 6. So if there's any questions during the presentation, please don't hesitate to ask. And I'm here to update the board on the development of energy storage technology and their applications, and the current and proposed legislation applicable to the electric utilities on energy storage. A comparison of energy storage targets between LADWP and other electric utilities in the state of California. And LADWP's efforts, which I'll spend a little bit of time on and talk about our efforts. And before I dive into detail, here's a quick description of energy storage. So energy storage is really the capture and redispatch, or in other words, charge and discharge of energy already produced. Moving from energy from one time for another is really, think about your smartphone. You charge it at night and let it store the energy, and during the daytime you use it and let it discharge. And during that time, it's really that storage value. Some of the benefits and application of energy storage in the utility scale really to support a volatile and the volatility of the renewable energy. That's one benefit. For example, when the solar panels on top of somebody's roof is charging, is essentially getting energy from the sun, is going into the grid. Now, if there's overcharging situation where we actually experiencing during June 20th, it actually goes back into the grid, and that potentially cause impact to our system. For example, frequency or voltage regulation issues. But if there's a battery somewhere installed, potentially that could capture that and kind of like calm the system down and stabilize the system. Well, on the flip side, if there's a cloud cover that comes over that same panel and suddenly drops the production of solar panel energy to zero or very low, the battery can actually produce or take the stored energy and put it back into the customer's home instead of causing the grid to have another shock. So the battery could be a good shock absorber in a sense. The last but not least, one of the most compelling reasons for energy storage is actually to provide, in the case of emergency or there's an outage, and instead of being complete out of power, the energy storage, for example, a battery system can actually provide that system. Instead of using a diesel or gas generator, which typically do in most of the homes that requires that, battery storage is much greener and also cleaner. And I'll talk a little bit more about that down the slides about a collaborative effort we have with the fire station and also with the mayor's office. This slide, I'm going to take a little bit of time, so if you have any questions, please do ask. One thing about energy storage that the people, including myself, sometimes don't think about is that it requires to be charged. It requires to have energy already produced to go into that system. So that is one thing I like to kind of keep that in mind throughout the whole presentation, is that, typical, on the very top of the slide, you'll see the typical the batteries that you use for your remote control is like an alkaline battery. And then it goes into smartphone. It kind of evolved through a lithium ion, very high tech, higher capacity, but also higher energy in a density wise put in the smartphones. And if you stack enough of those, you can put in your cars, like some of the hybrids and the electric cars that we have. You take that same technology, apply it in scale. We're talking about football field size. You potentially have a utility scale energy storage facility. On the bottom right chart, that shows you 4 types, and unfortunately, I apologize, but the 4th type on the very bottom has got cut off on the presentation, but I'll describe it verbally here. On the very top, you have the chemical type, which is a typical battery. You got lithium ion, lithium polymer, and then you have the sodium sulfide batteries, which requires very high temperature to use, and you got flow batteries. All of these are the chemical type, and the flow battery, I start from the bottom, is like typical fuel cell. I don't know if you still remember some of the fuel cell. This is the evolution of it. Essentially, 2 chemicals going through a membrane causes a chemical reaction that puts out electricity. And that is actually coming back because it's actually stackable. You can stack them up about 3 high. Whereas the lithium-ion batteries, at the current technology, you really can't stack them yet because of cooling reasons. I'm sure you probably heard some of the issue at lithium polymer batteries when they shipped over, it actually caused fire on the airplane. Well, that's the reason why it doesn't like heat. So those are the chemical type of battery technology. And then you have thermal type of storage. What is that thermal storage? Well, imagine you have a giant refrigerator, and then you store the cool air inside the refrigerator, and during the daytime, you open it up and cool your house with it. Well, essentially, that's like a thermal storage. So what we have is we have a planned project for both the Valley and Apex generating stations that we actually going to install some of these units. They call them ice bear or thermal type of chillers that going to inject cold air into the gas turbine so that it will fire more efficiently. It'll bring down the heat rays and you'll actually bring efficiencies up. So that is the type of thermal battery and thermal storage. Another application is some of the office building, they actually install these thermal energy storage. So that during the daytime, it actually blows a frozen piece of ice, and actually bring the hot air through the ice and put that air through the system and brings sort of air conditioning to the rooms. And it utilizes the energy at night, the lower price energy at night, to chill the water become ice. And that's another type of energy storage that we have. And the third type is mechanical kinetic. It's very obvious. It utilizes some of the compressed air or the flywheel technology. In other words, compressed air, they compress air into a cavern or some type of storage facility. And when there's energy needed, it actually releases the air and turns a generator, just like a generator at a plant. And it utilizes the compressed air to turn a generator and generate electricity. That's a mechanical or kinetic type. Last but not least.
So before you go on, the compressed air, underneath the Intermountain Power Project in Utah are tremendous salt domes that can be hollowed out to be used for compressed air storage. So we are involved with the project. We're trying to develop a project with some of our partners to see if we can get storage in Utah to really help create a renewable energy hub there. So I wanted to point that out, is that we have things going in all of these technologies. Louis?
And last but not least, the gravitational potential of the pump hydro, it's just like our Castaic facility. We utilize this, the lower cost energy during the night, pump the water up to the reservoir, and during the daytime, the gravitational just flows the water down and generate electricity through the turbines and hydro turbines. And that's the four types. Now, on the right-hand side of the slide, you'll see a chart. What it has is it's a discharge time on the vertical axis and the capacity on the horizontal. What does that really tells you? Essentially that the very far right, top right of the chart, those type of technology is really good for energy management or for capacity. If you want large amount of energy, large amount of power, and store for a long period of time, those are technologies that's available and or is under development. If you look at the bottom left, you have very short duration of energy storage or very small capacity, sort of like your lithium-ion battery in your phone, except it's actually duration pretty high. So if you can see, the biggest oval in that chart represents the most flexible type of technology that you can have for either for small applications, for large-scale application. That's why battery has sort of evolved into that realm of being the most flexible energy storage type. But that's what that chart is for. And one comment I'd like to make is that if we install enough lithium battery in the energy storage system, just for a comparison's sake, a 100 megawatt, which is this equivalent of a LMS 100 gas turbine we install scattergood, it's about the size of 2 football fields. So imagine 2 regulation-sized football fields, including end zones, okay, all of them. It took about a third of that size at this point for the gas turbine at scattergood. So just kind of give you a little scale. So if we somehow, the technology advances to make density of battery a little higher, and also we are able to stack it higher, then we'll shrink that size footprint a lot more, and it's more feasible to install it, for example, a landlocked Los Angeles instead of install it in the Mojave area. So this is the type of things that we're looking at for feasibility studies.
Where does that technology stand right now?
Lithium-ion?
Yeah, or, comprising the batteries.
There are a lot of companies all over the world that is, including research institutions like MIT and Stanford, UCL, they're all looking at ways to compress that and make it denser. So it's still what I'm trying to say is still sort of an R&D phase.
We do have some price projections on the cost of storage and timing, because that's obviously part of the overall rollout. We'll get to that in a few.
Okay, so any question on this slide? Okay, I'll go on. So real quickly, back in 2014, Assembly Bill 2514 was adopted, and it requires LADWP and all the public utility companies and also the investor-owned utilities to set targets by October 2014 for energy storage. And we have. And the Board of Commissioners and yourself approved 171 megawatts of several different types of energy storage to be achieved by December 30, 2021. That's what AB 2514 required. And there is a current effort through Senate Bill 886, and one of the drivers for this bill is due to the Southern California gas company's Aliso Canyon gas storage issue. I'm sure most of you, all of you are aware of that issue. And the intent of that bill is to provide electric power reliably and mitigate potential outages due to this type of issues, and also to ensure support of variability in renewable energy by 2030, which is the 50% requirement for all RPS. There are 3 elements for this proposed bill of Senate Bill 886. Number 1 is the new energy storage target by July 1st, 2018 to be achieved by 2030. The intent of that, again, is to make sure that we have sufficient amount of storage to support the variability of the renewable energy. And that we have done that. LADWP has already conducted the study Based on our IRP process and based on what the renewable resources we will have by 2030, the 178 megawatt currently is sufficient to support our system. So we have already done that. That's already done. In the 2015 RFPs already contemplate that. And the second key element of this proposal, the proposed bill, is procure cost-effective energy storage before fossil fuel-based generation is procured. Although the slides indicate that there is no substitution for conventional generation like fossil fuel generation, we're definitely looking at just one microscale, meaning one station at a time. But if we look at the whole entire power system, we have contemplated on future projects, especially repowering projects, that we may be able to install energy storage in addition to gas-fired generation, perhaps reducing the need for gas-fired generation because of energy storage, depending on the need of the station and the system, and also depending on the cost, feasibility, and also cost benefit.
If I can interrupt just very quickly. Part of that second bullet stems from a belief that they're on a one-for-one basis, where really conventional generation provides different services and different scale and can't really be replaced by energy storage, particularly where it is in its development. But it does not in any way reflect the fact that we've committed to basically a fossil-free future and are going to continue to move in that direction. At the same token, however, you do need to keep the lights on while you're doing it. And you saw in earlier presentations how our load varies, and we follow it with generators. At the moment, the technology really doesn't exist to effectively follow it with battery technologies. But I expect as those technologies mature and you see the cost drop, and we'll continue to put money in the R&D phase. We're certainly not going to wait 10 years to do something. But that's where that belief comes from is, well, this way we'll move faster to fossil-free, which humorously enough, it will actually slow our progress because gas is a transitional fuel to that new future.
Thank you, Marcy. And just on that note, too, we do have a couple pilot projects that we're going to embark on, and we already have started on with the Home of the Future and so forth. Those are the projects we're going to embark on to look at these technologies and how to manage them better. And just on a note with our neighboring utility, they also have the same requirement by 2021 to install renewable energy. And they have committed at this point about 100 megawatts, but rest of the about 2,000 megawatts of generation is a combination of combined cycle, which is fossil fuel, and also simple cycle. So they understand this, I call it the hybrid, the transitional between the future and also what's needed for present for reliability.
I think what's useful, too, about this is you hear all the time, where is DWP? You're miles behind everyone else is coming out with these offerings. No, not when you actually analyze who is projecting to build what. They have as many of the transitional issues as we do to work through.
They meaning Edison?
Meaning Edison, PG&E, San Diego, LADWP, you can see their percentage of solar is comparable, or excuse me, of energy storage is comparable to ours.
Can you just go back to the prior slide? On the first bullet under the current Pavley bill, board to set new energy storage targets, is that this board?
They were already set. However, it is the prerogative of this board at any time to change those targets and goals.
Okay, and then the question is, are there any criteria for what this board sets, any minimums, or is it just completely up to the board?
It's completely up to the board and to the laws of physics. Those are sort of the two balancing acts.
Right, but the bill doesn't specify a particular quantity.
It does not.
Yeah.
No, it's up to the board.
That's my question. Okay.
So here's a chart that's a very anticipated chart, is that if you look at the raw numbers of the energy storage targets for LADWP, San Diego Gas Electric, SoCal, California Edison, Pacific Gas and Electric, you'll see that the raw numbers we may not look as impressive as the chart below, which shows the percent of energy storage over the peak load as they published it. So if you imagine a peak load for water and power compared to Edison, it's very different. So if we want to compare on the level playing field, we're about 2.9% of energy storage of our peak load, whereas Edison's about 2.5% based on their commitment of 580 megawatts of energy storage.
We're
So
comparing
same thing.
apples to apples, basically.
Yes. Okay, so this is just that in a very simple chart. We also believe that each utility has very unique infrastructure needs, and so the needs of the energy storage will also change depending on it. That's what are going to a little more of our efforts. So what is our approach to energy storage and design and for implementation? We conducted studies on both generation and distribution systems, so both the high voltage and low voltage in our system versus the customer side of things, to essentially look at the distribution for reliability and also to integrate with the variability of the renewable and to follow the renewable energy. We also conducted outreach to energy storage industries, as many companies as we can possibly think of and also look at, and we contacted the Energy Storage Association to get those kind of contacts, and we conducted some of the cost-benefit studies based on their budgetary quotes and so forth, and how their system is applicable to our system. We already have existing thermal energy storage project at UCR and USC, and those we have already gathered lessons learned, and we found out that there's some benefits to them and also benefits to us. I'll go into a little bit more detail as that. And essentially, we see the customer benefit from lowering their bills, and we also see some benefits for stabilizing our system based on their variability. So that's some of the things that we learned already. Here's a chart that kind of shows the projection by the Energy Storage Association on pricing for lithium-ion battery, which is currently the most promising source of energy storage for utility scale and also for distribution scale. So if you can just look at the blue part of the chart, it actually shows just the cell, just the battery cell, nothing else beyond that, no controls and no equipment and no structure. Just the cells itself, the price will decrease about 50% from about 2022 to 2030. And then before that, it will also decrease about another 50% up to 2022. So as you can see, the price will start decreasing 50% in about 7 years.
If I can interrupt real quickly,
yes.
Louis. Two things. One, note that we use the Energy Association's projections, not necessarily ours. We used an association that's focused on moving this technology ahead. Secondly, I'll just start out by telling you the chart's wrong. Nobody can project the speed at which technology develops, at which prices drop. But you have to put a stake in the sand and start using it and adjusting. This is why Mike analyzes the integrated resource plan yearly, so he can shift the assumptions, bring us up to date in terms of technology. But it's just good to know at this point, this is where their own association thinks they'll be in terms of price point.
Excuse me, I had a question on that. Do we have prior price projections to give the board some ideas to how accurate our price projections were, or do we look back at that just as a reference point? If you know, it's difficult to. You're saying it's difficult to project.
Well, as an example, for solar, not so many years ago, the market price referent, which I think was set by the PUC, was $105. And a couple weeks ago, there's a solar plant being built in ISO territory at $37. Now, we knew we were going to have buyer's remorse when we bought it, but the rapidity of the targets that are set by the state to hit renewables do cause you to make some investments in technology that are not necessarily cost justifiable. We try to minimize that as much as we can, but it has to be acknowledged at some level, and you'll see it here as well.
And so I think that's why you're going to see that our strategy is going to be similar to how we pursued solar, is you step into it over the course of time so you can capture those lower prices, and you'll see the project sizes get larger and larger as those prices start to drop. And so as we look at the integrated resource plan, those key dates between 2025 and 2030, those are the dates that really align with some of our later repowering, like Harbor. So as that is the technology there so we can make decisions on harbor where maybe instead of repowering, we can do something different at that site?
I think that's a pivotal point. When people start talking about moving toward fossil fuel free, as we get those technologies in place, it isn't as if we set this long-term goal and we're going to invest in those gas plants historically, but there are openings in time to where you reevaluate the technology, and maybe you don't need to repower the last one. Maybe you don't need to repower the last two. All of those things are on the table every year when we do our projections.
Okay. So based on the 3 studies that we already performed and one is still underway, we already recognize there's going to be there's going to be a lot of renewable penetration or injection into our system on the transmission side, but also on the distribution side, we realize already that there are quite a bit of photovoltaic injection or the solar panel injection into our system. What does that mean is that we found out that as we studied the energy storage, we had to project the demands of the customers and that all of the renewable resources, how it impacts our distribution system. And the more that the solar PV installations gets installed, the more energy storage we potentially may need at the distribution levels. And those are the ones that we have done already. And under another study, which is called a distributed energy resource study, and we're going to integrate with all the potential distribution energy, for example, from electric vehicles, from energy storage, solar panels, energy efficiency programs, and also demand response. All of that, we're going to integrate that together, call it the distributed energy resource study. And here are some of the projects, which includes the ones that the board has already approved. And if you look at just on the Beacon Solar project alone, we have a 250 megawatt solar farm that's going to come online by next year. And with that, we're going to we have already started the energy storage project at Beacon for the first phase, about 20 megawatts, and to come online and hopefully by Q2 of 2017, and phase 2 schedule 2018 Q4, which is about 30. So that's about 50 megawatts. Another research.
So before you move on,
Yep.
this storage project at Beacon is in direct response to Aliso Canyon, because we were looking at ways, what could we do to accelerate? So our staff has already started site preparations. They've started working on the facilities. We've worked with the battery storage industry, the association, to find companies that can provide the batteries quicker. So right now, we've moved that up an entire year to accelerate, to help with the Aliso situation. But it's really now battery manufacturing it's not there to deliver at the rate that we need. But this is a giant step forward, us pushing this an entire year earlier than we anticipated.
I have a question on Beacon. Do we own that, or is that under PPA?
So the Beacon site, the station we own all the land.
So that's one of the, just going back to some of the concerns that have been raised, that's one of the benefits of actually owning something, because it gives you flexibility to deal with market issues that either are unanticipated or anticipated. And that sometimes gets lost in the debate over whether we should own versus do a PPA, right?
Right, absolutely. And that's why even if we do a PPA, we have options to own so that the tax benefits can be extracted and we can step in and buy the property and the project down the road.
Right, every one of these, you go through the determination, what's better given the development of your system at the time. And historically, we've held probably roughly a 50% equity interest just to have something to shoot for. But there are also times that a PPA provides a level of insulation and optionality that you want to utilize that methodology.
Mike, on that point with regard to doing this, speeding it up to the extent we have in the context of Aliso, if that hasn't been communicated to our legislative delegation, it should be, and perhaps it already has been, but that's a really important message about something that we're doing that, given what's going on in Sacramento, they ought to know about.
No, and we have communicated, especially to Senator Pavley, and as part of the work plan, as well as the stakeholder process. So people are hearing it.
Beyond
it's hard
Pavley,
to know if the message is getting communicated and absorbed.
I think it's important that De Leon and Rendon also are aware of this.
On the same effort, we also want to really discover and learn how the battery will react to a typical customer building like this. So we are embarking on a research and development project for the JFB to install a 300 kilowatt system, and with different type of technology of batteries, to understand how we can better use it for energy efficiency, for potential load shifting, and also how does that work directly with electrical vehicle charging, and so that we can understand it better and also connect it directly with a smart grid integration. So all of that is our pilot program that we're under development right now. And for Valley and for Apex generating station, those are the combined cycle units. The combined is over 1,000 megawatts. So we're going to install this thermal energy storage that I mentioned earlier to increase the efficiency of those units. Also, the fire station collaboration with the fire department. We're looking at a couple of stations at Porter Ranch right now, and we're going to install both the solar and battery combination, and also with our smart grid integration, so that we can understand how to use that system, not just for an emergency situation where the potential outage at the power outage at the fire station for that reason, but also for on-demand uses during the day and a high peak, if we can use the battery and charge using the solar panel charge battery and so forth. All of those will be studied based on the system that we installed. And also another effort looking at is Owens Valley. Our Owens Valley transmission goes all the way up to all the generating stations. Those are sometimes can cause impact to our frequency and voltage. That means we have to follow with some type of system. And right now we have a fixed system, but we potentially can put some type of energy storage system to better regulate and better follow those frequency and voltage fluctuations.
Can you explain that just in a little simpler terms, that following issue?
The following issue?
Yeah.
The what in the old school models, as people's demand increases during the day, you get to work, you flip on everything, it starts to come up. There are people in the control room who look at that curve and then who map out how they're going to use generation underneath it to follow you. But we can't, it's not a predictable science. So you need resources that can move quickly to fill in gaps. Where it's become more complex with the advent of solar is that it gives you a whole big bandwidth of energy you can't control, and you don't exactly know what it's going to do. You can't predict cloud cover. It's more challenging, so you need more available generation that you can control to be able to meet that volatility. That's why they keep referencing renewable volatility. What we happen sometime, and this is unfortunate because I don't like the cost implications, is we have our utility solar on, our utility-built solar. Well, now the sun really peaks about noon, and all of that behind-the-meter residential solar all comes online. Well, the only thing we can do fast enough is dump all that utility solar off the system so there's room to take all of that unexpected solar. The problem is that utility-built solar is priced far less than what's being brought in, and so you get these cost implications of not being able to adequately follow load. I firmly believe technology is going to fill in this gap, and there's a lot of different ways to do it, and I think it's a transitional issue, but it's one that batteries are a component of helping to solve.
And just on the last bullet there, we have already, we're in alignment with the proposed SB A80, the Senate Bill A86 mentioned earlier, that we are considering energy storage as a hybrid project with a repowering project for of the fossil fuel type. So that is already looked at, and as Marcy mentioned earlier, that those are very critical for our reliability of our system. So here's some of the recommendations, and there is no action today. This is just a presentation for information. Yeah, we're on target.
Can I interrupt really quickly? Sorry, Liz, I don't mean to keep kibitzing on you. Last year, someone showed me a fold-out chart that showed the varying segments, distribution, generation, and then it showed the varying projects for battery storage in each of those sections. Can we have that tuned up and provided kind of as a one-sheet reference for the board?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
So our current energy storage targets and plans are in alignment with the proposed A86, matching the key elements of supporting the 2030 50% renewable portfolio standards and the studying of the energy storage application for future repowering of gas plants. And energy storage are modeled within our LDP's IRP for several years. As far as back in 2012, I started to see the model already being contemplated. And we are maintaining our current energy storage procurement as approved by the board back in 2014. So we'll have 178 megawatts. Our target is 178 megawatts by 2021. And we are exploring other energy storage incentive programs, just to inform you that to complement the state's self-generation incentive program.
As an example, combination, at a residential level, combination solar battery storage systems. We want to be able to look to incentivize that technology as an example.
Open for other questions. Do you have any?
I have a broad question, and I'm not sure this is the appropriate time to get into this kind of detail, or maybe there isn't as much detail as I think. I don't understand the nuts and bolts of how all of this works. I would assume that, and maybe this is a wrong assumption, that storing solar is a different challenge than storing natural gas. That energy from the solar comes out differently than in the pipes or the system than it does with either fossil fuels or other types of energy. What are the differences in terms of storing renewable resources versus storing non-renewable resources? The energy that comes from them.
That's so. In essence, storing of electrical energy, for example, what we discussed here, for the most part, is in the form of a battery. So if you want to store the gas energy, you have to have a vessel, some type of tank, some type of cavern, some type of like Aliso Canyon. You have to have some type of physical cavern. But as far as electrical energy, the most flexible way at this point is going to be through a battery. We can store electrical energy, for example, that we've been doing for many years by using a gravitational like Castaic. So we have water up here in the higher elevation and it flows by gravity, and we pump it back at night, and that's a form of storing using the water as a means of storing the energy through using the pump of the water. So for natural gas, the only way is stored in the pipe or vessel. So that's the differences.
So, but you understand that once it's electrical energy, it doesn't matter if it's solar, it was produced with natural gas, coal, or anything else.
Yeah, well, that's my question.
Yeah, it doesn't make any difference whatsoever.
Right.
So that's why all of these technologies can work. The question then becomes is which technology solves the problem you're trying to achieve?
Or as many problems as possible.
That's right.
Or, well, generally, it's the control system that's really important. So do you want to store extra renewables because you're producing too much? Do you want to use it for the volatility and that following? Is that what you're trying to do? Are you trying to really stabilize your distribution grid because you have too much voltage fluctuation? And what can you do here locally that will stabilize that? Each one of those technologies can be applied with the right control systems. And this is what the challenge is for our team, is to step into those technologies and figure out how they best fit our system. And that's going to take some time, but we're actively working that direction.
That's very helpful. Thank you.
One analogy, if I may, just I tell my kids is that imagine, I install solar panels and the energy just backfeeds into the system or inject into the grid. It's just like if I take a water hose and hook up to my faucet, and I have a pump behind the water hose, try to pump water back into the water main. That is essentially the difficulties that the water system is going to have to imagine. If Marty ever is going to have that problem, I don't think so, but hopefully not. But
Marty calls that contamination.
And the contamination is really what our distribution system sees. That's the contamination in analogy-wise that we are seeing today.
The other, just kind of to close this out, is you recall earlier when we talk about our distribution grid it ends up being like tiny fingers that extend out into the distribution area and serve blocks of residents. It was developed as a one-way mechanism. So now that we have the proliferation of solar and battery storage out at a residential level, we also need to reinvent the distribution grid as a means really for two-way flow. And so we have to think of that concurrently with trying to develop these technologies.
Dr. Pickle.
As you understand from the basics, storage is complicated, both in its engineering and its economics. And that's why what Mike Webster said at the beginning is considering this as part of the integrated resource plan process is important. Even the most simple storage, you have to think about how big you want the ability to take energy and put it into storage, how big a container do you want, how big a battery do you want, and how fast you want to take it out. So those are three parameters that occur in any storage project. And those are just the simple technologies. Some technologies make it even more important. This report talks about new storage. We're already blessed by one of the biggest, most flexible storage systems around, Castaic. So these are the additions. The additions are expensive and hard, and they're improving over time. The stalking horse for all of this, for large-scale storage, is, as has been mentioned, a combustion turbine, big jet engine. You can install them fast. They start fast. They use natural gas. If you use natural gas and you're starting a lot of natural gas real fast, we've discovered painfully you need gas storage. We have a site that is good for gas storage because salt domes, as mentioned at IPP, are good for gas, the best source for natural gas storage. But that's the stalking horse. At one end, that's large scale, long time cycle. At the short term, batteries are good at short term response, very rapid response, but demand side management, having the customers respond either automatically or by some simple design may be cheaper than batteries in other ways. So we're playing off everything from conservation to gas versus renewables in this process. So this is, back to my original point, complicated. It's going to take a while it takes a while to evaluate, and the technologies are all moving quickly. So this will be a debate that continues for the next 15 years.
I would offer to the board, this is why carve-out type legislation is so problematic for utilities, because they're usually developed by one vendor or one market segment to advantage them for laudable end goals. Well, I get that. But the integration issues of all of the technologies and the grid, it's far simpler for us to be given the overarching policy direction. You want to be at 50%? You want to be at 100%? Then set that stake in the sand. But by telling us, no, walk this way, nope, wait, that way a little bit more, no, wait, you did it wrong. That kind of legislation is very prevalent at this juncture, and I haven't seen that it's going to back off at all.
This legislation applies, I mean, not to repeat Mel's question, but I just want, it applies directly to LADWP and the IOUs the same way, or does it only apply to the IOUs as a mandate versus us?
Go ahead.
Yeah, it's proposed to apply equally to all entities.
But the caveat to that is, remember from earlier discussions, we don't operate and make investments in our system the same as the IOUs do. They've sold off generation. Someone else does their transmission. So the decisions they make in response to this legislation is, as long as you cover our costs, you can do whatever you want to do. We're in a different position because you have responsibility for the cost equation. If there are no more questions, I want to thank you, Lewis. That was very well done.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Thank you for listening.
I was just going to say the same thing. Thank you, Lois. Okay, we move to management reports. Management report 7A, the Bucket Brigade report.
You're going to do it first.
No.
I was looking at our Bucket Brigader over here.
I'm the brigader.
Good
Marty,
morning,
are you going to
Commissioners.
intro it, or?
President
Okay,
Levine.
let's go.
Yes, well,
Gentlemen?
Good morning, Commissioners and President. I'm David Jaco, Director of Efficiency Solutions for DWP, and to my right is Mark Hovatter, Chief Facilities Executive at LAUSD, LA Unified. And we're here to provide an update at the request of Commissioner Barad on the Bucket Brigade Challenge at LAUSD. Okay, so I want to give a little bit of background, and then I'll turn it over to Mark for the actual update on the contest. So last year, Commissioner Barad proposed to us that we consider a drinking fountain program to capture the water that's being lost through the flushing of the fountains at throughout LAUSD facilities that still have issues with potential lead contamination. And there's a process, there's a detailed program in place to physically remediate that issue by fixing those. But in the meantime, it is necessary for the affected fountains to be flushed in the morning for about 30 seconds every day. And the thought was, Commissioner Barad's idea was that that water, one, is being wasted, but two, it presents an opportunity for engaging the students and creating awareness around the water conservation issues we face, especially in light of the ongoing drought and the Save the Drop campaign that the city had launched last year. So working together with LAUSD, we developed the Bucket Brigade Challenge component within a larger water conservation and Save the Drop strategy that LAUSD has created for the entire district. So it's a subset of a larger conservation effort. And Commissioner Barad has leveraged the Valley Coalition of Neighborhood Councils to line up further support and publicity for the Bucket Brigade Challenge. We, LADWP, our public affairs group, worked closely with LAUSD to help develop the contest and the flyer, and will continue to provide assistance with the contest as it moves forward. And so Mark will explain a little bit more about the ideas behind the contest.
All right. I first apologize. I know I was requested to come a couple weeks ago. I wasn't able to do that. I was actually in Washington, D.C., receiving the Secretary of Education's award for Green Ribbon, which was recognizing LAUSD's efforts across the country to do conservation efforts, to incorporate sustainability into our instructional curriculum. And actually, our Bucket Brigade was one of the programs that we touted in our application when we put forward. So it was something that has now received national attention. But we launched the program officially in June, but we certainly started the program before that. As you can imagine, anytime you deal with kids, we have a tendency to be conservative when we approach. There was concerns about, because we want the very youngest children to be involved too, there were concerns about how big of a bucket and how heavy. We are flushing water that potentially has levels of lead in, so our Office of Environmental Health and Safety wanted to get involved with that, but we think we've worked through all of those programs. We formally launched the program in June. It's going to go through, and we're going to announce our first winners in November. But we've got a lot of excitement about this. We put together a complete communication plan, and I'll leave copies with the members here, but we're trying to get this out as much as we can. We've identified audiences, a very thorough communication plan, the audiences, what type of media we do. It's also an exercise in incorporating every mechanism of communication we have available to us today, which are pretty substantial. We've done the joint press releases. We have websites and various organizations' websites. We've got a daily report. We send emails directly to our site-assigned administrators that they're speaking this up. We're trying to keep up with the times. We're on Facebook. We're on Twitter. We do the various posters. We let the students themselves advertise through their posters, and we incorporate that into the evaluation of the program. How much did they do? This isn't a program for us that's just about saving water. It's certainly going to do that, but it's more of a program for us. We see it as an opportunity to change the lifestyle within the group. We're actually encouraging the students to participate and develop this program themselves, and to carry it not just from school, but to carry it to their homes and to their local neighborhoods. So It was a program that started out over the summer, and we're going to take into consideration as we evaluate the awards and who's going to get the benefit from participating, what they've done over the summer and how they've been able to incorporate that program in. So it's a program that's gotten a lot of attention. There's a lot of excitement amongst a lot of younger people, and what we did to try to excite them was we promised them that we would put some facility dollars onto their campus, and they get to pick what it is they're going to do, whether it's a shade structure or whether it's new playground equipment, whether it's more landscaping and those type of things. And we're also going to make this a continuing program. While we intend to announce the first awards in November, we're going to continue this as long as we do our sustainability, or as long as we have our flushing program there. And I believe that there'll be enough momentum here that it's going to carry on even after we get all of our fountains off flushing. And just a brief update on that. About 20 years ago, more than 20 years ago, we started our flushing program in response to some settlement and lead levels potentially above the recommended action point. And again, being very conservative, if there was just one fountain on a campus, the reality is we had less than 20% of our fountains that showed any signs of requiring this. But if there was one fountain on a campus, we flushed every single fountain on a campus just to be conservative, to make sure that it didn't migrate to another fountain that was there. We have been very aggressively working to take those campuses off, and for 20 years we'd never had a campus that was not under flushing. In the last 8 months or so since we started this program, we've got 102 campuses that are off. Last Thursday, we submitted 6 more campuses to our Office of Environmental Health and Safety. Expect them to come off this week. So we are making very good progress, a lot of momentum moving towards getting the fountains off. But again, the program really stresses changing a whole lifestyle, an attitude of what we do with water conservation. You know, and it's a very real example that the students are able to look at and see every day. We're getting the momentum on it now. We've gotten several people that have expressed interest. We've reached out to the student bodies, and they're promoting that through the various groups. I expect it to be a tremendous success, and I just want to publicly thank the Commissioner for helping us work with this, and I think we're going to see a lot of good come from it.
Commissioner Broad.
Yeah, just background. This began last April 2015 when I brought it up at the Commission. When it came to my attention that the district was flushing the water fountains at their various campuses. As you know, we met several times with David Chacot and his staff, and with your staff. And then twice you came to, and by the way, it's the Valley Alliance of Neighborhood Councils.
Mythology.
Yeah, and the acronym is VANC. It's not coalition. And you came out and we proposed a partnership with the neighborhood councils, that each one would adopt a school in their area and get if necessary, pay for the buckets, but work in conjunction with the neighborhood councils. So it causes me concern that on your flyer, twice neighborhood councils are mentioned, but I don't hear any plans for you to involve neighborhood councils. And since we decided in our Valley Alliance, which represents every neighborhood council in the San Fernando Valley, 34 neighborhood councils, voted unanimously to participate. And since then, people have been saying, Jill, what's with that program? And it's very frustrating to me as a commissioner and someone who's trying so desperately to conserve water that I have not heard from the school district. We have no plans, you have no plans to work with neighborhood councils, and yet it says partner with your local neighborhood council up above, and at the bottom it says your neighborhood council partner. Well, I don't know who's doing that, and I don't know where that's coming from. It seems like you've taken an idea and you're using it, but you're not really partnering with neighborhood councils. That's number one. Number two, there's really been no communication with me. Now, this is not about me, but this is about DWP. And it certainly would make a message that we would be visible to the community that we are changing the way people are doing things in terms of water conservation. And when I proposed this project and called it the Bucket Brigade, this was to be a visible commitment that we are really committed to water conservation and we are educating the next generation. Now, what you said, it sounds fine, you're educating the next generation, but I don't hear a comprehensive plan for recycling this water. I remember distinctly you said that when I said, well, where does this water go that you're flushing down the drain? You said, mostly, you know, we use a lot of the water for irrigation. And I said, well, then use this water for irrigation. I haven't heard that at all, that you're actually using the water for irrigation. So I don't know, besides this challenge, which, by the way, I must say, was never part of our original concept. Now, that's fine that that's what you're doing, but this is really only a part of this whole idea. And if you're going to do this challenge, and you're going to have choosing your audience and your media, I think that it behooved you to come back to me and say, here's what we're planning, let's work together on this. Because as you remember, we were supposed to have a press conference last September, which is almost 1 year ago, and I had everybody lined up, elected officials, school board members, everybody was ready to go, and it never happened. For one reason or another, it was never put together. Now it's a year later, you're doing the media, you've picked the audiences, and where's the DWP in this? This is part of our program. So I'm venting my frustration and my disappointment that we're really not working together on this. And I don't know what your comprehensive plan is for recycling this water. Also, when I looked at the information that we were given, your numbers are very different than was quoted to me a year ago. Because we sat in a conference room and I said, how many campuses are there? And how many water fountains are there? And there are 800 campuses, and they all have water fountains, and the elementary schools have a lot of them. And I said, okay, and you flush each of these 30 seconds a day. How much water is that? And there were some calculations, and I remember distinctly the number. It was 60,000 gallons of water. And in your report here, you say it's between 600 and 750. That was not the number that was given to me a year ago. So I don't know where this number came from. But those are my questions and my comments. I think that it says something to me that with the drought that's going on and how we're trying to educate the next generation, it all boils down to $5,000 prize, coming up with something. So what happens to all the rest of the schools, and what happens to all the rest of the water fountains while X number of schools are competing? What about all the rest of the schools? What's happening? What about all the rest of the water? Is that still going down the drain while a few schools are competing for $5,000 challenge? I mean, that's great to have a challenge, but that's just a small part of this picture. And in my last comment, I think that when coming from the Valley, in Woodland Hills, the Anthem Blue Cross building, which covers acres of land, got rid of all the grass, and now they have all California-friendly plants. For a while, it looked really awful, but now they're starting to look better. They showed that they are responsive to what's happening in water conservation. And it got a lot of very, very positive press. Now, I'm wondering why is the business community more responsive to what's going on than our school district? And that, I think it's sad. It's sad to me, and it's, the way this was explained, those that participate in the challenge, it's where the principal wants to do it, the teachers vote to do it. It's going to be a handful of schools where we have 1,000 schools in the unified school district. And so I think this is just a small part. And I think that I need some answers to those questions.
Thank you for those questions and concerns. And I can't possibly respond to all those today. I'll respond to just a few. Some very important ones. You said, why does a private company care more about conservation than the district does? Absolutely does not. I tell you, you mentioned this is a small part. This is an important part. Yes, it is a small part because we have a lot of opportunities to conserve water. We have a lot of opportunities to conserve electricity. And we are in, full bore. We are all in, and we've got a complete commitment to do that, and we are, and it's received national recognition because of our programs, and we're setting models, and we're training other school districts how to incorporate that. A large part of that is because of the partnerships we've had with DWP and the education on the best practices that we can do, and we've incorporated. I recognize there's some frustration, and I share the frustration with you that it's taken us so long to start the program, but understand we live in a world where we are ultra-conservative when it comes to children, and anytime anyone uses lead, water, and children and heavy buckets in the same sentence, there are a lot of steps that have to go through before we can go out and fully implement it. We did meet with the local neighborhood associations, and you very graciously helped us coordinate that, and there's a lot of support there. They haven't been approached yet because we officially kicked this program off in June. Our schools ended in June. They're starting up again in August. I expect our
You
schools
started this in June, and yet this board was not told that. So this is not a partnership, Mark.
Well, then we obviously have some work we need to do better communication with this group and with you, and we'll make sure that we're committed to do that. But I expect the local neighborhood associations to be fully engaged in that. I expect the schools to be reaching out to them, and I expect students to be going to their meetings.
Well, how are you doing that? I mean, you expect it to happen. I presented that form to you. I handed it to you. They all voted for it, and then nothing happened. So how are you now you're going to reach out to what is a neighborhood association to you? When you're saying neighborhood councils, and they haven't even been contacted. How can you say that they're going to partner with a neighborhood council when you have not done anything to go to those neighborhood councils? You haven't followed up.
Well, I haven't, because it's a schools program, and the schools themselves are going to do that, and the students.
Well,
That's the whole point of the program is to get the students involved. I don't need to be convinced on the importance of this program. I'm already all in. We are trying to change the culture of our schools and get them directly involved, and that's the process we're using.
Well, I don't know where the leadership is. You can have the best ideas, but if you don't have leadership and someone as the point person directing this, it's not going to happen. And I have doubts about this program because based on what I've read and what I'm hearing, I don't see that there's any leadership up there pulling this together.
I assure you there is leadership. The leadership is committed. There is a dedicated communication plan with a staff of people that are working and assisting and coordinating it. And I look forward to several months from now when you tell me how pleased you are that the program was successful and went through and achieved what it was that we're trying to achieve.
And I would like to suggest Mark has prepared a very detailed communications plan, but instead of just distributing it generally, and we're certainly happy to do that if you would like, perhaps we could set up a meeting with you in the next couple of weeks of my staff, Mark, his staff, and the communications plan, and really look for those opportunities for synergies that you're talking about between the department, LAUSD, and the neighborhood councils, and see how much of that, we'll review and see how much of that's already there, and then what needs to be beefed up so that when this really does, effectively launch for the fall quarter or the fall semester, everything's set up accordingly, and those can really be leveraged.
Well, and also, I'd like to know when you say that you're having media, who's doing that? Are we working with Joe Romalo on this? I mean, who's coordinating that? Who's getting the people there? The original intent was to go to the hottest part of the valley and have the press conference there, choose a school. I talked to the school board member. He said, fine, immediately, count me in. I want to be there. I spoke to city council people. They want to be there, the assembly. But you know what? Now you're not even giving me the respect to let me know what you're doing. It just never happened. So I really, before you do this, I'd like to know what your plans are. What kind of a kickoff is this? What kind of a plan? What is this? Is it just a challenge? I mean, I haven't heard you say what the rest, what your comprehensive plan is for recycling this water that's still being flushed down the drain.
So again, I would suggest perhaps if the commissioner is amenable, we could work with Barbara to set up a direct meeting with you at a place and time of your convenience. And
I would be glad to do that, but I think that the school district should have the answer today. I don't know why we have to talk about this in private. I'd like to know what the school district's plan is with all this flushing of water. I mean, I know that you're replacing a lot of the water fountains and the pipes, but what about all those, still the 30 seconds a day, all that water being flushed down the drain? I mean, what are your plans for that? What are you doing besides this challenge? I mean, I don't know why somebody from the school district is not prepared today to answer that.
We've had very extensive plans that we have done very extensive communication with this organization on what we're doing, and many of the programs were in partnership with this organization. This bucket brigade portion, while it's important, is but a small percentage of the total amount of conservation efforts that we've done that have saved us a considerable amount of money. I don't have the statistics directly here in front of me. I didn't understand that that's what I was coming today to speak to, but I certainly can provide that information to this group again. There is a considerable amount we have done. Specifically for the bucket brigade, I'm not presenting you a plan because the whole idea, our whole approach was to have it the school's plan, to get the students to develop the plan, to get them to show the commitment and the involvement, and they are going to brief us on the plan.
All right, so what about all the schools where they're not participating in this and students are not coming up and you're flushing the water? What about those schools?
All of those schools will be off the flushing program within a year. However, we have many other opportunities for them to show conservation efforts. We have many other opportunities for our instructors, our teachers, to help implement a changed lifestyle of how they see and approach those things. We have very many programs that we're doing with partnerships through DWP, with partnerships directly with the state, with other volunteers that are coming onto our campuses.
All right, but the bottom line is this water is going to be flushed down the drain for the next year, and has been for the last year. So now we're up to 2 years worth. While the community, while Los Angeles is being asked to conserve water, while I have a bucket in my shower to catch the water. And while I'm recycling water, this water is being flushed down the drain. And now it's 2 years that I know of. So I don't find your responses satisfying. And I'm not a blamer, and I don't mean to point the finger, but I'm just expressing my frustration at this. And I don't think this speaks well for the school district, and I think we're missing an opportunity at DWP to show the commitment to conservation with this program. And we have a lot of programs, but this is one program where this would be a very visible commitment to water conservation. Your turn.
I'm done. I appreciate your comments, and I'll take them to heart. I think the most important thing I've taken from here today is that we have done a poor job of communicating all the efforts that we did, because I fully came here expecting not to receive criticism for our conservation program, but to receive at least acknowledgement for the things that we've done that far exceed the amount of water, the minuscule amount of water that goes down through the flushing program.
Well, 60,000 gallons a day is not minuscule.
No, it's not, but nor is the amount that we've conserved over the last few years through partnerships with DWP, for which we are incredibly grateful and which I expect to see continue to expand and to be more and more effective. We are not the bad partner that is, does not care and is frivolously wasting money, frivolously wasting water. We are, I believe, are one of the models for not just Los Angeles, but for the country in our water conservation efforts, and I am committing to you that I will do a much better job of communicating what all those initiatives have been.
Now today is August 2nd, and I think you've got September as one of your months here to compete. So registration deadline is like in a month and a half. So I don't know what you're doing. If you're going to keep this on here about neighborhood councils, then I think that you really ought to have some kind of an organized plan to reach neighborhood councils and have them partner, because you've lost a really great opportunity in the past year, to involve neighborhood councils that were willing to do it.
Commissioner Funderburk?
Sorry.
No, you have the floor, but I just want to thank you, Jill, for taking the lead on this and pushing it along. I think that communication is probably something that we could do better at here. I don't think that Jill's comments at all take away from the efforts of LAUSD, and I think that I speak for her and the other board members to recognize you for what you have done as a partner. I believe you're one of our largest customers, both electricity and water.
Yes.
And when we really appreciate that. So I think that, but I also sense Jill's frustration with this, because as one of the leaders and on the vanguard of neighborhood councils, the kind of inventor of, you're architect of the Neighborhood Council Alliance that is the overarching coordinator for the neighborhood councils. I can see how something that she had a vision of a year ago while we were in the middle of our rates and other things that we were doing may have been put on the back burner here, and I hope that it's shared not just with Jill but the other commissioners what this communication plan is, because I have seen Joe Romalo's shop do great work when he's called upon at DWP to do it, but sometimes it's more a matter of coordination of the communication. So, and I think that this also has this speaks to a lot of issues that we have been trying to, and I think DWP and the school district as a partner should get credit for. The school system is a great way of communicating, especially to the majority Latino population in the school district and the city, to families where Spanish is spoken and English is not spoken, and communicating with the children. I believe Commissioner Levine mentioned it when the schools came here for the filming issue. It can be a great vehicle. So I hope that we can have a course correction here in terms of communication. I think that the content is already there. It just hasn't been presented and kind of coordinated with Commissioner Barad. I think that it would be helpful to clear up some of these numbers, you know, how much actually is going down the drain, how much actually is being used for irrigation, because it's certainly not 600 or 700 district-wide. That's just too small a number to imagine. I don't know how many of these schools operationally are under control of the LAUSD with the big charter reform movement that's taken place, with about a third or a quarter of the schools now under charter. So I don't know how much jurisdiction LAUSD actually has. I don't know if there's an MOU that we have with the LAUSD that could possibly incorporate the bucket brigade or something.
A lot of the charter schools are still part of LAUSD.
Something along
And
those
they are fully engaged in this project.
Yeah,
We don't separate out charters from.
something along those lines. But I've heard Commissioner Barad put herself out there, because I've been to the bank meetings myself where she's mentioned this. I've been to a few of them in the past year alone, and I would like to see that within some type of reason that her vision be implemented here, and you know, perhaps our sustainability, energy efficiency, and LAUSD divisions can work more closely with her on getting this communicated to the board. One of the issues that I want to make sure is, you know, that this wasn't mentioned in the context specifically of our budget discussions in May. You know, is there a commitment on the part of LADWP on a budget standpoint? And if there isn't, then we just need to make an adjustment for it, or if we're going to commit to it in some way beyond just a token MOU or whatever other resources, I think that ought to be cleared up as well. So I think that there are a number of issues that probably need to be fleshed out here. I do want to thank the LAUSD, if you can send that word back to your board, for the effort that you've made in the past in working with us. You've been a great partner. You're a great customer. I like to take care of our customers. But I also sense the frustration that Commissioner Barad has had for just being a neighborhood council involved person myself, and having been a founder of the Greater Wilshire Neighborhood Council Sustainability Committee and former board member of Greater Wilshire Neighborhood Council, and seeing the work that Jill has done on trying to keep the city together this way. So I would encourage everybody to perhaps maybe get that communication plan to Commissioner Barad and the other board members, so that she can exercise the leadership that she's shown in this, and get this thing moving in the direction that it's supposed to be. So.
Thank you, Bill.
Well said, Commissioner. Any other comments or questions on this item? Thank you both very, very much.
I just wanted to say, David, will you put together a meeting?
Yes. Yes, I will, Commissioner.
Yeah, it's soon.
Yes.
Before any media.
Absolutely.
And maybe we can clear up some of the numbers and the language on this.
We'll review those as well.
Okay, and I want to thank David for his leadership from DWP. Appreciated.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you. Thank you. 7C, JD Power Market Strategies International.
I think we're being in the
Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize. Overview of LADWP real estate program.
Thank you. There was a request several meetings ago to look at our real estate that we have, kind of give you a status report of where we're at, make some recommendations if they were appropriate on what we thought we should be looking at moving forward.
David, just for purposes of the record, several meetings was actually several years. The commissioners have been pursuing this information, so I didn't want to let that go unnoticed.
Here, there was so kind of an overview. There's the department has 6,000 parcels in a number of counties, And a parcel can be a standalone parcel, or as the example shows here, Stone Canyon Reservoir has 176 parcels. They're used for operations and infrastructure, and they're assigned to one of the systems. So they're owned either by power or water. Most of them were purchased over 40 years ago, and we pay property taxes on properties outside LA County. We don't pay any property taxes on any of the properties located inside LA County. We do have 4,400, so the majority of our parcels are in LA County. And power has about 4,000 parcels used for a number of different things, but you can see the majority is for transmission right-of-ways. Water has about 400 parcels. You can see their water tanks and reservoirs and pump stations. And then the other things like buildings, they're each assigned to one of the different systems, and they own the different items listed there. We keep track of them and actually have them on this map that you can see, and it shows there's a mark for each parcel. There's a mark for the age of the parcel. If you kind of look up to the right, you can see 2 lines. Those are obviously transmission right-of-ways, which are made up of a number of different parcels. So it's scattered around LA County, and that's a good record of what was purchased and by different colors when it was purchased. So in September of 2002, the board adopted a policy in the water system for property, mostly to ensure safety and protection of the facilities, identify acceptable and unacceptable uses, and direct that periodic reviews occur of the excess property. And in May of 2011, the general manager essentially adopted a similar policy for the power system. And I do want to let you know that there have been reviews of real estate over the years periodically. So it wasn't just done in 2002. Every decade there has been reviews, and what do we own and what are we using it for. So parcels that aren't currently in use are being held for future operating flexibility, and that might be infrastructure, service yards, construction sites, laydown sites, and then looking at some of the potential, what's coming, distributed battery storage, renewable generation, and water and power actually over the last, approximately last 6 to 9 months, reviewed their parcels, and no excess property was initially identified, and I think that's important, and we'll come back to that. Each system manages its own real estate, so this is kind of important, and as I learned more about this, it kind of made sense whether it's right or wrong. So they manage their own real estate. It has been centralized, decentralized, transferred between systems. One of those that you can see over several decades, like, well, who's going to do this? And it just keeps being moved around. There was a centralized approach for management, then decentralized.
Currently, what's the status, and how many individuals comprise our internal real estate management team?
Sure. Right now, it's deregulated. So water's managing their property, and power's managing theirs, and they're essentially working as a broker. So there's only really a handful in each of the systems that's actively in a real estate section looking at the property. Maintaining or managing out in the field, of course, that's different. But really in each system, in total about 10 or 12 people who are serving more as a broker or providing different feedback, and that might actually be a little high. It could be about 8 to 10. But,
for instance, just for perspective, in water, most of the properties except for the yards are where we have facilities. So we have someone who manages the properties in our operations division, and they make sure that it's properly maintained and everything from fencing and security and things like that. Mm-hmm. When there's actual transactions, such as like a cell tower lease at one of our water tanks, that goes through real estate, and they handle all the agreements of that, and they just come to us for sign off as the property owner. Mm-hmm. So the kind of commercial real estate functions happen in real estate, but the properties as a piece of property that we hold and manage and use ourselves happens in the division that's responsible for that.
And who controls the database of all of our properties? Is that also?
That's actually in one of the real estate sections, but it's the information that goes in comes from either the water division or the power division.
But that is a central piece of information that we oversee. Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
So that third bullet, no longer a centralized property management type function, and I obviously highlight that because we'll come back to that item a little later on. How do we keep track of the parcels? We have several different things. Remaps, we have a database. I'll show you that in a moment, which really controls and monitors all of the LADWP parcels and ties in to assessor records. We're looking at evolving that so it can also tie into the Owens Valley water property and then assign additional information to that in the future, actually integrate with some of our Maximo systems, and then the ability to facilitate the public to actually access our database to look at the property that we own if it's not sensitive for security needs. And there's kind of a, here's one of, and it's not really easy to see, but these are all of our customer service centers, and you can see them scattered, and so you can bring it up by, okay, show me all the customer service centers throughout LA, and it'll bring it up that way, and then you can drill down and say, okay, what is this specific one? And it'll say that's the Van Nuys Commercial Branch Office, and it'll show you the map. So there is a tracking and a capability to review that from a centralized location. Again, it needs some evolution to move it forward and have it more usable.
I could understand having the customer service offices publicized and available to the public, but why would we publicize anything else?
Say we were advertising for nurseries to use our right-of-ways as a secondary use, maybe we'd put that out there so that people could see where they were available. But again, a lot of it, you're right, would be secure, and we don't want the public to hone in on that. So this is real important on how, say we have surplus property, how do we dispose of surplus property? And that has to follow a state-mandated disposition process defined by government code. So if we identified a parcel as surplus, it's first offered to the other system or anywhere within DWP. We then offer it to any other city departments. If no city departments want that, we're then obligated to offer it to all other governmental agencies that are in that area. So we have to notify the local jurisdictions where the property's owned. If nobody in any level of government is interested, no organization or entity is interested, then it can be offered to the public for sale, and it's either a negotiated or usually public kind of auction process. If it is offered to the public for sale, then it goes through that process, and it has to be brought back to the board and the city council to approve of that sale. And if we sell that property, it usually has to be fully remediated. So we have to go in and do all the environmental and look what might be there, and then do any potential cleanup, which depending on what's there could be costly, or it might not be costly. But it is a very lengthy process. One of the consultants that I'm going to cite in a moment just said it's slow, procedural, and political, and it's been specifically made that way so organizations can't be shipping out property that can be utilized by other governmental agencies and make it more costly by selling something to the public and then another agency having to go buy that exact parcel.
David, do you have a number on how many properties we have that you would identify as surplus?
Right now, it's been identified as 0, and I'm going to go through a little bit of a history that shows where we're at, and maybe a bit of a why we're there, but more than that,
and all the counties, including LA County?
Yeah. That's what the systems have identified as not having surplus.
Just a question, Dave. And I didn't see it in here. If you go back to that last slide, do you have some examples, maybe the next time we walk through this, some examples of when we actually have gotten rid of properties? And how, so, some have been just sold off, some have gone to other city agencies, some have gone, most I would guess are just within the department itself from one side to the other, right? But then when they've gone to other city agencies, what that's looked like from the beginning to the end. So how was identified? We identified this lot, here's the process we went through internally. Because I see how cumbersome this is. I'd be curious about how long the timeline is between the time someone identifies what they believe is to be surplus inside the department and the time that it's disposed of or not disposed of.
Sure, absolutely.
Is it defined in both the charter and by ordinance?
I don't know if it's in the charter, but it's broader, it's statewide. Every jurisdiction has to follow the same disposition process.
It is a bit complicated because there are state rules, and then we have charter and ordinance rules as well. So in addition to complying with state mandates, you have your local city rules that you have to comply with. So that adds to the duration.
Right. And so I get all that. And I guess one of the reasons I'm curious about this timeline is those rules can all sit out there, and so much of this, that's an academic conversation because we never even get to hitting up against the rules because we never identify property that we see to be surplus.
We actually, there's been, like, for example, lots in certain districts that we've defined as surplus to our needs. The issue then becomes, do we pay for the rehab? Rec and Park then wants us to pay for maintenance if they turn it into a park. So there's some of those consequences, but we have surplus or surfaced those for surplus and gone all the way through the process, and we can get you some examples.
Yeah, I mean, that'd be right. Because unlike we keep comparing it kind of to commercial real estate, there's no, or I can't find the incentive, maybe you'll tell me what it is, but there's no incentive internally here to move properties, right? So even if I have that as part of my job description and I'm tasked with identifying something, it's not like in the private sector where I'd identify and say, well, this is great resources and I somehow will benefit brokering this deal. I don't really get anything if I get rid of an extra lot here. So it's hard to even figure out who's tasked with identifying surplus properties when they themselves would have no incentive to help identify the surplus properties. It's better just to hold on to the property themselves.
Well, it's interesting, too, because you get into the competing interest and priorities discussion. I had a real estate agent the other day send me a flyover of Valley Generating Station, and they said, look, it's 133 acres. You should be able to surplus some portion of this for sale. And it's interesting because you hear back from the neighborhood saying, you better not, you best not. You hear back from staff saying, where is it you want us to put these battery storage units that you're going to buy?
Right.
So it is quite an orchestration when you start to look at the purpose and intents. A big use of property, you see the parcels, is the right-of-way. And the board's previously established right-of-way policies for utilization, and that might be something we should surface and show you how has it been working, do you want to make any changes, here's the revenue that's derived from that, because that is a significant amount of our holdings.
Absolutely. And yes, I would be curious about talking about just about rights of way, because there's all kinds of other city purposes we could.
It's fascinating. People end up building out on it, and then they sublease it, and oh my goodness.
So some other disposition issues, historic zoning can affect the fair market value. Really, based on everything, the original purchase price, the zoning, the disposition requirements, and this is a general statement, but it's essentially almost 100% true. If you sell a parcel and you need to buy a parcel almost just like it, you're going to pay a lot more for the replacement parcel than the parcel you just sold. And it is a reason why staff does get very concerned about selling a parcel if they think even remotely there might be the need for a parcel in that area sometime in the next several years.
That brings me to the last bullet. When I read through these materials, I can't help but ask in the last bullet, why not lease the parking instead of just sell the parking lot?
And that happened a number of years ago. It was one of those, when I said a little earlier that it's political, this was obvious. I mean, I wasn't here, probably someone else can say this, but obviously if you're going to sell some vacant parking from a parking lot basically from the utility to the school district, that there's got to be something more involved. And then what happens? We have a commercial customer service center where nobody can park. Right. So now we're literally going to move to a different location because we've got something that's non-workable. And so it's, again, disposition is it gets very touchy with staff because they see things like this and go, well, what are we going to do with customers? Here's a couple examples that Marcy almost said. So we have a tank farm that was a former oil storage facility with a lot of remediation costs. Staff would be, well, let's not look at remediating it and selling it. We're going to have a bunch of batteries. What more ideal location than to potentially put batteries? So that's one of those things they're looking at right now, or as something for the future. A park that's showing as essentially vacant land here, but it's an inert landfill, had a lot of construction materials. We have a 30-year agreement that we can't.
Are there dead bodies in here?
No dead bodies. Well, not that I know of. I didn't do it.
I thought this is a cemetery.
It's near it, but it's right. It's not the cemetery, and it was a landfill that's been capped. We can't construct anything or do anything on top of that or disturb it because it's basically a capped landfill. There have been a couple real estate assessments in the last several years, and there's one that was in 2009, one that was in 2011. I'm going to go through the 2011 one first, which was Cosmont companies that were brought in to say, can you look at all our properties and kind of create some low-hanging fruit opportunities to sell, which they did. And then they also said, here's how you can utilize technology to kind of monitor your properties, which was some of that RE/MAX system that I showed a moment ago.
David, when Cosmon did this study, is this property in all counties where we own property?
They just kind of looked and said, is there some low-hanging fruit that we
But everywhere?
Yeah.
Okay.
What they found, though, were essentially 6 properties, some of them made up of several different parcels, and what you can see is 5 of them are reservoirs. One of them were some vacant parcels adjacent to a pole yard, and it's kind of important if you look at the acres. Really, most of these are a couple acres or less, except the top one, which is essentially almost 600 acres. And were some various comments. Again, this is 5 years ago at that time, and some potential values. I do think it's interesting how the low to high value on $81 million was like $700,000 difference. Kind of really, that's a low versus high. Who knows what it would be then and now, and there are various cities where they're located. But there are challenges. You have a vacant parcel that might have been purchased 50 years ago in an area that at that point was primarily rural, and then the land use matures around it. The community takes ownership. They say, that's our site. You can't build anything on that site. And it becomes very challenging to say either we want to sell that site, or we want to build something, or we want to do anything that a community feels will impact them. On top of that, there is the surplus property process that we have to go through, the evaluation on what we're doing now and what the future will bring. And I'll tell you, those 6 parcels are no longer considered surplus by the systems because they're concerned about having available land for future needs. Some of the recommendations they had, again, was on top of that, the technology part was put in the different phases of the system that would monitor the property. They also looked at kind of a review of property, what might be more efficient, which was they said you need to look at consolidating some of your facilities, and you need to look at some of your existing sites as being utilized as essentially a warehouse hub. You shouldn't have to drive 30 miles to get something. Create some little warehouse hubs so that those staff in the field can go quickly to somewhere and pick up the spare parts they might need. And then we're also looking at that center that we're going to consolidate, looking at the call center and a service center, putting those all into one facility to utilize a single space for some efficiencies. And then another item, we're getting rid of the Pasadena Water Lab. We could relocate those individuals to Van Nuys Service Center and then declare that property as surplus. Again, that hasn't been finalized, but that's one thing that can be done. There's also a mitigation, and I want to describe what mitigation is for those of you that might not know. Say you're going to go build something and there's an endangered species there. You have to buy additional land or supply additional land somewhere else as mitigation area for the site that you disturb. So if you disturb 1 acre with an endangered species, you usually have to go buy 3 acres somewhere else as habitat area for those species. And you can see we've got several projects that we're looking at purchasing replacement land. And one thing is we have to keep the water rights, which sometimes does cause us not to be able to use existing land, but we're looking at variations of that. Here's one that we have right now. So there's a large site in Malibu originally purchased to put a nuclear power plant there. It has.
I'm sure the residents love that.
It really doesn't have a lot. It doesn't have a lot of monetary value right now because there's a huge incline on it, really a low return. However, we've already looked at maybe there might be some mitigation use, and it's really staff believes more beneficial right now to retain it as a quote like investment or potential mitigation than sell that and have to buy similar type property at 10 times the cost or 20 times the cost as mitigation when that's necessarily. So then Duff and Phelps came in a little earlier, and they did a different view. What is secondary land use? What could we do? And that secondary land use is where you use the property for something that isn't its original intent. And the really top use and best example is use a nursery under a right-of-way. So the secondary use is the nursery, the first use is the right-of-way, and we've been doing that. But as you know, NERC and FERC, the two regulatory agencies, are starting to increase the hurdles you have to jump over to utilize that secondary land use. So they are looking at that much more strictly and stringently. Really, nurseries, parking lots, and telecommunications are what are our primary secondary uses. Duff and Phelps reviewed about 3,000 parcels. They kicked 2,000 out right away, or 1,500, because they're smaller than 1 acre or have limited accessibility or poor characteristics to use. Excuse me. They did identify about 400 parcels that could potentially provide lease revenue. We adopted several of their recommendations, including what's called a holdover language. Before, if their lease expired, we weren't going out and doing anything. Now, if their lease expires, there's some conditions that occur immediately upon lease expiration that increase their rent and do a few other things.
What kind of nurseries are you talking about?
Usually wholesale nurseries, big wholesale growers, usually. But this is where Marcy had said that sometimes they're building structures that we aren't really aware of, and now NERC or FERC or our own staff are coming in and saying we can't really adequately get to our facilities quickly because there's something in the way. So we're working with the nurseries on that. We created a 5-year or a master telecommunication lease with adjustments and 5-year renewable options for 30 years, and we are reviewing those right-of-ways. We've pursued secondary land use on those properties only in a reactive mode. So we really haven't, to this date, gone out and proactively marketed that space. And one of the reasons is it's the same staff that's trying to do projects would also, at this point, have been the same staff marketing those. So it hasn't been done. And really, except for telecommunications efforts, all of the secondary land use efforts in power system has stopped until this task force of a whole bunch of different divisions has relooked at this, including the NERC and FERC regulations. So at the end of this, and I'm sorry it's taken so long, but we kind of have a recommendation, and that's get back to a centralized real estate management function, get staff specifically assigned to review our properties and provide ongoing property management, look at further consolidation, get this periodic review of parcels and land use, identify and document. It's real easy for the systems to say, we don't see any surplus property, but let's have some documentation as to why that's defined as to what do you think that property could be used for in the next 10, 20, 30 years. Compile a list of what we need, compare that to the list of what we have, and then provide those periodic reports to the board of is there anything surplus, and if not, why? And then a couple other just comments. We need to complete that secondary land use policy and bring it back for board review. We need to create something much more formal and approved so that it directs staff on what they should be doing and what they shouldn't. And then just one other thing that I know we've utilized in the past is kind of looking at property as a portfolio of investment. And what often happens, and you've seen it before too, there gets to be a recession. It's let's sell everything that is even maybe surplus. 5 years later, the economy recovers, and we're out there buying the property that we sold for 10 times what we sold it for. And that, and I will tell you, because you cited it a little earlier, staff gets, and I've been the same way, staff gets very protective about selling property if they even think there's any use for it in 10 years, because it's very hard to purchase that property back in an urban setting once you've let it go. We're right now looking for another yard, and been looking for it for years, and it's very hard to find a very large site that you can put a yard on in an urban environment, because you essentially have to have something else large that's for sale, and there aren't that many large parcels. So
I have a question.
Bring that forward.
In LA, rec and parks now are looking for land to put pocket parks or parks, different communities throughout LA. Would some of our property, would that be something that we could look at for parkland and have some relationship with rec and parks if they're looking for this kind of thing?
We can go through that if we identify some of those parcels, which is why we need to look at those parcels less than an acre as well, and identify something that we never believe we're going to need, and look at that potential and bring it back to the board. Great, but I will kind of put a caveat there. Once something's turned into a pocket park, the chance of ever utilizing it for anything ever again that the utility might need, that the department might need, is gone. So we really have to be certain that we never really want to use that again, and that we don't take over through some sort of agreement the expected maintenance cost, landscaping cost, because that's often what occurs is, can you lease us that, and then over time, can you pay to maintain the park? And that's not what our function is, and that's not what our rates are really allowed to be used for.
I think that communities are looking for open space and making their communities more walkable, more livable, place to sit on a bench, bring their dog, watch their kids, all of those things. And so the communities now are looking more for land that they can develop for what we're calling pocket parks.
And we will absolutely, as part of this, identify if there are any surplus parcels that could be then sold to Park and Rec for those.
Yeah, I know that, I think you and I have talked about Chicago, where I went a couple months ago, and there are pocket parks everywhere, and it's beautiful. And the developers are committed to that when they put something there, part of that land is a pocket park, whereas we just build, and they have these pocket parks. And it's great to see, because you see parents sitting with their children or whatever, it's or people walking.
Thank you, Dave. Very helpful.
Good, very helpful.
Commissioner Noonan.
Just on a related note, General Manager Edwards, may I ask you to please follow up with Guy Lipa, just relating to the last communication he and I shared on July 1st relating to the status and consideration of the department's plans to retrofit this building. It's been over a month, and I thought I'd hear back from him by this time.
Okay.
Thank you.
And I think at some point we'd had a conversation, and maybe it'd be great to just loop back about, it was around the rights of way, but it was specifically around nurseries and what the status was of our subletting out land for nurseries, especially with regard to liability issues. So if we could get something back fairly narrow, but just on where we are currently using properties, subleasing for commercial nurseries, liability issues, and then maybe where there are some potentials to using more of them or something.
It's interesting. There are a couple large commercials, but a lot of them are the smaller kind of mom and pop nurseries. And when they came up with some very stringent stormwater control regulations and associated fees, these nurseries said they had no money to do this. We ended up actually creating a transitional plan where we helped them pay it down, and then they took it over. But there are a lot of concomitant issues with leasing right away. So we'll be happy to put that on the list.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Go ahead.
One last. I think the Cosmont report was, 2011? Is that what it said here?
Yes.
Is it possible to have him do an update? And I think that would be helpful. I found this presentation very helpful. And I think to see what changes, what he would say now, 5 years later, 6 years later,
Sure.
and do an update on this.
One of my thoughts with the centralization, then bring in a consultant and update their report.
Yeah.
Have Cosmo.
What about would it be appropriate to have him come here and make a presentation once he kind of looks at everything?
It seems so. I'd want to meet the people.
Have you met
yeah,
him?
Sure. I haven't.
Yeah, he's really brilliant, and he's got a great reputation.
Okay.
Thank you, Dave.
Thanks. I'm next, too.
Oh, okay.
I look real comfortable. That's why I'm not.
Welcome, Dave. We're now on Management Report 7C.
Okay.
Which I jumped the gun on earlier.
Thanks. And this is actually pulled from item 9.1 in management report, so you should have a copy of this attached to the back of that. If you don't, I think we've got some extra here. Last meeting, I talked about RKS, which essentially is very site and service specific, so we get some very specific feedback and allows us to then determine what we need to do moving forward. Today, we're looking at a lot, kind of more of an industry-wide, department-wide kind of evaluation, if you will. And these are two different organizations, J.D. Power and Market Strategies International. So it's the results of those two. So first, we'll start with J.D. Power's 2016 Electric Residential Satisfaction Surveys. Today is a high-level overview. These just came in. We wanted to show you kind of the high level of what's going on. Then we'll drill down and come back at a later date and start getting into details. Our score was up 18 points from last year, but we are still essentially not where we want to be. We are down towards the lower end of the spectrum, the low end. But I'll get to why in a moment. Billing and payment and customer service scores are now the highest of all of our attributes, which is important, which means our customer-facing attributes are scoring the highest. But J.D. Power's ranking system makes improvement kind of difficult. And one just interesting thing I bring up is if a customer knows somebody who works here, our score is 117 points higher. I mean, a significant 15% higher, if you will. It also tells you, well, nationally that's only 48, but it also gives you an opportunity. How do we introduce the people that work here to the community? Because if we do, their impression of our efforts is much higher. So again, a lot of this kind of is utilized by staff on how can we look at areas where we need improvement or we're doing well, but we need to improve our communication. And I'm going to talk about that here in a second. These are the 6 areas, or should say 6 areas, and then the bar on the far left is the overall satisfaction index. But J.D. Power weights each of these items very differently. Power quality and reliability is weighted at 28%. Price and billing and payment are the next two. They're weighted at 19%. Corporate citizenship at 16%, communications at 14%, and customer services at 5%, which, if you think of that, it's kind of, in my mind, is actually a little strange in that you're a service-oriented organization and customer service is weighted at 5%, whereas billing and payment are each weighted, and price, or your rates, are 19%. This scoring system or this weighting system has been used for years, and it's just a little strange if you see you could just max out at 1,000 on customer service, and it's only 5%. It's not going to increase very much. One of the things that you can see if you look at price, which is factored at 19%, and that's the third bar from the left, we have some of the lowest rates in Southern California, and yet it's ranked very low by our customers. That's one of those opportunity areas. We need to share our rates being very affordable with our customers to let them know that we shouldn't score as one of essentially the lowest item on price when it should be one of the highest items.
I think we really need to focus more on methodology, because we throw up rate charts all the time that show these comparisons, but what people believe is what they see. And they see a bi-monthly bill for multiple city services, and then they compare that with a neighboring electric, and they go, well, your rates must be 4 times higher. So one of the things we can do quicker is move to budget-based billing, which takes some of the cyclical high nature out of the bills and averages them out over a year. We have still plans to move to monthly billing, albeit it's still down the road. We still got computer fixes and other things to do. But we need to revamp our materials to, I think, make it clear to people what this value proposition really is.
Excuse me, what, that sounds like you've been thinking about it.
You think? Yeah.
So do we have, I know that you generally don't say things without already having a plan in place. And so is this something that we've thought about rolling out in the next 6 or 9 months to try to communicate, or?
It's a twofold answer. One is I want to make sure we have the capability to deliver on it before we start articulating it and selling it. And we have, as part of the class action settlement discussions, we have a court-appointed overseer who has now prioritized the work of our technicians, et cetera, certainly toward resolving that. But what it's done is it's starved other things in the pipeline. So my hope is as we get a little further through the remediation-related activities, I can have enough assurances that IT can do the programming for budget billing, we can get the materials put together, and then build the outreach plan on top of it. Mm-hmm. It's moving slower than I had hoped, but it's a challenging nut to crack.
Is any of this a result, are any of these factors a result of our not in being more engaged with our ratepayers? I know that we've really did a great job of the outreach on the rate case and everything, but is that something that we could...
What you could say is we focused for about a year on the rate case,
yep.
And that was really the surpassed anything else that we were doing because it was such an important priority to share that and communicate that with our customers. Now that that's over, and we will continue to communicate on rates and the rate plan, but we can add other things to the mix, and those are items that we identify through this process that says, like, we need to focus on communicating our affordable rates to customers, or improve our communications. Or this allows us now to focus on other things because the effort towards the rates is scaled back and freed up time to meet these challenges. This I think is one of the most important, though. This shows 2013, 14, 15, and 16, and all of those different areas and what the scores over the last 3 years, how they have changed, and every one of them is trending in the right direction. So it shows staff is really working hard to improve the scores everywhere, and their hard work is working. This shows the overall ranking this year versus last year in customer service. We said, well, customer service is ranked low. It's not influencing that overall score very much. But what you can see is we are just below average, so we move way up in the ranks compared to, we're the lowest when you take overall. But this moves up right to average, and it shows we improved by 41 spots over last year. So it shows that customers are really looking at that, or 41 points, really looking at what we're doing and improving our scores by providing really positive feedback. So again, a couple of the challenges. Our reliability is way better than regional peers, but again, perception by customers is that our reliability isn't as good, so it gives us an area we need to focus on. And then again, going to some factors difficult to change and improve because of those rankings and weightings. And I want to go into the market strategies international because that shows you a different approach. This is again evaluating the overall department. It shows we're up 25 points over last year, and it shows all those different areas. Kind of similar to the others, named a little different, but every area we're going up and improving. This is hard to read, but what this shows along the bottom is what I really wanted to point out. Remember that one where it said customer satisfaction is 5% of the 100%? This one says, well, customer focus ought to be 19% of the overall. When you look at that, we start moving up, and the different weightings, which are different than J.D. Power, we take a higher level. It shows that we have gone up 25 points over last year, and it shows that we're improving in all of the different areas again. But again, just using a different mix and different factorings, different weightings, it provides a different score and places us in a different location. The overall message here is we use a number of different customer feedback processes to determine where we're doing well, where we need to improve, where we need to improve communications, where we're meeting or exceeding communications. Reliability on both of them. Our systems, it is working great, but some of them we do need to focus again on like communicating that to our customers. So today, kind of a high-level overview. Last week, a very detailed overview, and we mesh all that together to look at what we need to do over the next year. And with the detailed one, that's on a more frequent basis. So it helps drive our work and drive our priorities. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions? Now, again, thank you, Dave.
Yeah. Thank you.
Council?
Yeah, at this point, we will recess into closed session, and in accordance with the California Government Code, we'll report any final and reportable actions taken there.
We will recess into closed session.
So give me some counter.
We recording?
We will come back to order. On the agenda, the next item is monthly reports. Assuming that they are expeditable efficiently, we'll handle them now. Otherwise, we'll push them back. Madam General Manager?
Actually, sir, I believe that the monthly reports are all in writing in your books, and we'd be happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Any questions? That was expeditable, efficient. Thank you. Barbara, discussion with neighborhood council representatives on any neighborhood council resolution or community impact statement filed with the city clerk which relate to any agenda item listed or being considered on this agenda for the Water and Power Board.
We have no community impact statements or formal positions were filed by any neighborhood councils on the items on today's agenda.
Thank you. Election of offices. In accordance to the board or with the board rules, at the beginning of each fiscal year, the board nominates and votes for a commission president and vice president. Nominations are in order for the position of president.
I hereby nominate our current president, Commissioner Levine, for a second term.
I second.
Or third term.
Fourth term, fifth term.
Wow.
And I second.
Any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
It's approved. Thank you. Request from commissioners for nomination of vice president. I nominate our current vice president, Dr. Funderburk. Is there a second? Discussion. Those in favor?
Aye.
Congratulations. You've been
Condolences.
Motion to approve the minutes of July 19th, where Commissioners Levine, Funderburk, Noonan, and Barad were present. Is there a motion?
I just wanted to make one little tiny clarification.
Okay.
Let's see. Sorry. Okay. It's in the beginning, I guess it's under item 3, where it says, Commissioner Barad, please move filed items. I think just to be a little more specific, to at 12:30 after the closed session.
Please move file items to 12:30 after the closed session with that amendment.
Rather than take out the end part. Yeah.
Barbara, you got that?
Yes.
With that amendment, is there a motion to approve these minutes?
So moved.
Second. Those in favor? Aye. It's approved. Okay, Barbara, are there any items to be pulled for public comment on the agenda?
I have no speaker cards.
And Dr. Pickle, do you have items you want to identify?
No, I do not.
Okay, do any commissioners wish to pull any of these items, starting with item 13 through item 30 for discussion?
Is there someone here who will be talking about the 27, 28, and 29 on retirement? I just needed some clarification.
Okay, so do you want to have discussion on items 27, 28, and 29?
Yes.
Okay. Any other items that require discussion? Is there a motion then on items 13 through 26 and item 30?
Second.
Those in favor?
Aye.
They are approved. We see an exodus.
Oh, God.
This is the exodus.
Whoa. Whoa. This is like parting of the seas.
Part the Red Sea.
Oh, my God. That's what I was thinking.
Okay. Who would like to discuss items 20? Who would present items 27, 28, and 29?
Good afternoon. Katie Zordia, Interim Assistant Retirement Plan Manager, and I have with me
Munev Karen Seha, Assistant Retirement Plan Manager, Retirement Plan Office.
And we're both from the Retirement Plan Office.
Right.
We also have, or we should also have, Mr. John Monroe from Siegel Consulting, our actuary, on the phone with us.
And how do we I'm not good at this technical stuff. How do we do that?
I believe.
Is he on the phone
I believe
now?
he's already on there.
John?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Oh,
can you hear me?
yeah, loud and clear. Excellent.
It's the loudest I've ever heard it,
None of the
actually.
commissioners needed to do anything. That's the best thing. Okay, Commissioner Broad, did you have specific questions, or do you want a presentation?
I had a specific question. If you could explain just the difference between each of these. I know one is Tier 1, Tier 2, and so on. But if you could just tell us the difference between each of these, that would be helpful.
Sure, our pleasure. We can go through each of the items if you'd like and provide a little bit of detail.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, I'm going to discuss item number 27. Item number 27 is an administrative change. The change involves a proposal, a plan amendment proposal, to eliminate an account which we currently call the Reserve for Investment Gains and Losses. This account was created in 1982, and right now what will happen is when we eliminate this account, the change will be that all investment gains and losses will now be directly recorded to the General Reserve account. It's an administrative change, and there is no impact on benefits and also to the cost of the plan. Item number 28 is also a resolution to adopt a proposed plan amendment to correct classes that are eligible for Tier 1 membership upon qualification. So what happened was on July 1st, 2014, Tier 2 was created, and there were two classes that were supposed to be added when Tier 2 was created, and these classes were the construction electrical mechanic and also the construction electrical helper. Our actuary, Siegel, has completed a cost study and has made a determination that the cost impact is an increase of 0.43% of the estimated DWP contribution, which translates to around $2 million per year.
And item number 29. 29 is when the plan amendments went into effect for Tier 2 in 2013, there were some unintended consequences in the administration of Tier 2 provisions. These are just for corrections and clarifications on the following items. And the items include correcting eligibility requirements for survivors' optional death benefits allowance, clarifying the definition for continuous service, clarifying the eligibility requirements for members to make contributions to the disability and death benefits funds, and reinstating the definition of LACERS, SERS, and city service. Siegel has concluded that there is no material impact on the plan nor the department. Did you have any questions for us?
No, but I wanted to back up to 28.
Okay.
$2 million a year. That's just to include these two classifications?
Yes, ma'am.
And why is it so much?
Our actuaries can provide more information on how they did the cost study.
Okay. Is he there?
Yes, hi. Yeah, you know, the people that were included in the study, I mean, there was about 237 people included in the study, and we looked at how much their costs would be with the Tier 2 provisions, and then how much their costs would be with the Tier 1 provisions. And yeah, the difference was about 0.43% of payroll. And then, you know, the payroll for the entire plan is rather large, so that's about it's about roughly $2 million a year for these 237 people.
How many people?
237.
Okay. It just sounded like a lot for that. Okay. All right, those are my questions. Thank you.
Commissioners have any other questions or comments on any of these three items? Is there a motion on item 27?
I'll move.
Second, those in favor?
Aye.
To approve 28, is there a motion?
Move.
Second, those in favor?
Aye.
To approve 29, is there a motion?
I'll move.
Second, those in favor?
Aye.
They're all approved.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much. Well, that was very efficient. Any other comments or questions before we adjourn for the next 2 weeks? Hearing none, meeting's adjourned.